This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest and freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. It is episode number 35 of the podcast, alongside my sidekick and partner in crime, Doc John Macaroon. Doc, what's going on today? How are you doing, my pod father?
Happy start to the Major League Baseball season, Vito. It's finally upon us. It seems like the Tigers are starting the season off way late. Games were on Sunday. Got a chance to peek into some of the games on Monday. And here we are, the Detroit Tigers, as we record this, starting off the season tonight versus the Marlins. I'm fascinated to get your take on what's going to happen this season, your level of excitement, what should we expect, and really breaking down the 2016 version of the Detroit Tigers. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen. What are you going to do this Friday? So lots to chew on, and I know that you teased it earlier on our Facebook Live post that you're going to tell us what 5 components winning clubs have to have, and let's see how the Detroit Tigers rank in terms of what you think they have or what their limitations are. How excited are you? It's opening day,
We're
baby.
finally here. I love baseball. My passion, my favorite sport, really my favorite hobby is watching baseball, being a part of a baseball game, and being along for the run and ride that is the Tigers' 162-game regular season, year in, year out. And on the day of this recording is opening day for the Tigers, but on the road, interleague play in Miami, and really it's opening night at 7:10 p.m. being the first pitch, supposedly, as, you know, that's the set time for the first pitch for the Tigers opening day on the road. And then Friday is exciting because it's opening day at home at Comerica. Lots of fans going down to the ballpark, being around the ballpark for the tailgating, the pre-gaming as it's called, where there's drinking, the alcohol's flowing, people are being crazy, dancing, laughing, having loads of fun, Doc. And I'll be missing out on it. I'll be working. I think you will be too. But we've both shared our experiences now. We did last week on the podcast, sharing what we've encountered in our past experiences on opening day. For me, it was one time. I believe for you, how many times? You said the one that you brought up for sure, where you brought up that you kind of didn't remember the Coney Island.
Yeah, I've been to opening day downtown twice.
Twice now, okay. Because you talked to us about the opening day experience where you didn't remember what was American and what was Lafayette Coney Island. As in, you didn't know which one you went to because you had too much alcohol in your bodily system at that point. So, but you know what? A lot of people will have that problem, I believe, on Friday. We'll be stumbling, fumbling, looking like fools, maybe getting arrested, and we don't advocate that, by the way, here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Co. whatsoever. But have fun, have loads of fun, enjoy the ball game, and hopefully the weather's bright and nice and good enough to support, well, the element, the environment that is opening day and how exciting it is year in, year out. And especially when you have a team to root for that is a quality ball club. But the question is today on the podcast, how quality of a ball club will the Tigers be? Because it's very much a boom or bust team. We've talked about that ad nauseum here, as I said on the Facebook Live video that we did before this show today, Doc. And really, for me, it comes down to 5 major components for whether or not the Tigers will contend for a division title and then make it all the way to the Fall Classic, to be the first team to go from last place the year before to first place and to win it all. You know, since the Bo Sox did it, the Boston Red Sox in 2013, when they were miserable the year before in 2012, then won it all, first by beating our Tigers in the ALCS, and then won the World Series as well in 2013. What a way to cap off a great run from last to first. Now, that'll be hard for the Tigers to repeat that kind of success that the Tigers, or that the Red Sox had there, winning it all in 2013 after being so bad the year before. But can they do it? Yes, depending on the 5 major components and whether or not they can meet them, or maybe get lucky and get better with those 5 components as the year progresses, via trades possibly as well when we get closer and closer to that July 31st non-waiver Major League Baseball trade deadline. Because moves can be made at that time to upgrade the ball club, to get them into better contention, into better positioning, to make a run to the Fall Classic, and to first and foremost dethrone the Kansas City Royals atop the American League Central Division. So a lot of things have to happen for the Tigers to be able to do that, Doc, by the way, because I have the Royals right now winning the Central, as I talked about last week in my prognostications of the American League as a whole, going division by division. So Royals, once again, to recap all that from last week, in first place I have the Royals, in second the Indians making the wild card too, and the second wild card spot. With that being said, in third place I have our Tigers, and they could be hovering around the 80 to 83 win mark, but probably will win will need to win about 85 to 86 games to actually finish as one of those 2 wild card teams in the American League this year. A lot of parity, which will push down the win totals for a lot of the ball clubs in the American League. But still, you got to win, as you know, Doc, 85 to 86 games to realistically make that playoff spot, even as a wild card team.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, the minimum threshold is going to be, but I would rather win the division, go out there and try to reclaim the American League Central. It's going to be super tough, just in looking at the projections, what you stated, and what other people around the nation are talking about. It seems like maybe I underestimated the American League Central. I can honestly say that when you look at teams like the White Sox, Kansas City, Minnesota, the pitching of the Indians, a lot of people are giving the American League Central a lot more respect and saying that it's not the, sad division as it has been in the past, and it's going to be even harder. So to win the division, you're going to need between 90 and 98 wins, and I'm not just certain yet as we start the Major League Baseball season that the Tigers have enough and that they're going to, all hold up. Because it seems like the Tigers have to have a lot of things go their way.
They do. A lot of ifs on this year's ball club.
And so with that, it leads you to have a lot of doubts. And I like their position. I actually like the fact that in years past, they were the overwhelming favorite, and they had that mentality of, hey, if we don't win the World Series, then it's a bust of a season. And now they're going into the season, and they're thinking, okay, a lot of people are underestimating us nationally. Nobody has them winning the World Series. And a lot of people are saying that just going into the season, they're going to be a 500 team. And that's what you're saying, roughly, is that they're going to be, a team that wins 83 games. I don't see a scenario where they're going to bottom out, but I don't see the scenario where they can, really overtake teams like Kansas City or the Indians in this year's race. So we'll see what happens, but what are some of your keys? What are some of your components that you're looking for a club to be successful? I'm kind of fascinated.
Well, first and foremost, to your point about the Tigers, being claimed as World Series favorites, and you saying that they haven't been because, they're not good enough. You'd have to be on something really good, a really good drug to predict the Tigers to win it all this year, because right now, as their ball club is currently structured, they're not good enough as a roster, from rotation and bullpen to lineup. And then you got the skipper to take into account, and that's one of my components, major ones to take into account when you look at whether or not a team is good enough to make it all the way to the Fall Classic and to capture the World Series trophy at the end of the regular or postseason. And it's a long season, 162-game regular season, then playoff baseball in October. It's a long way to get to the Fall Classic. Even the best teams, the best of the best, don't reach the Fall Classic at times, which is the pinnacle of success in Major League Baseball. So the Tigers falling short is to be expected because there's so many good teams in the American League, and the Tigers are less well off than a lot of those major league teams in the American League as a whole, specifically in their own division. When the Indians, I think, are better, at least a hair or two better, and the Royals are still a few steps ahead of the Tigers as a roster.
Okay, now I threw out on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, and before you tell us your keys to success, a lot of people are saying roughly in that 80 to 95 win range.
95 would be I saw that too. That would be way too much, I think, to predict right now.
Detroit Sports Shirts has them at 91 wins. Red Wings Pride has them at 97. We just got a couple tweets in here. Brian W. at Bubba Lions has them going 82 and 80. Now, there was one tweet that was a little bit ridiculous, having them going 162, which I think might be the absolute ceiling is 100 wins. I don't see them getting to three figures. And
the absolute ceiling might be that 91 that somebody predicted there on Twitter. I think 91, 92, maybe 93, but getting to 95 or above wins. Getting to 100 to that threshold will not happen this year for the Tigers. Could have happened in the past, and they never even did it when they had great ball clubs, better ball clubs than this year's version of the Tigers.
Now, we could say if they're hopeful, if everything clicks, the starters are pitching well, and they maybe succeed in, getting numbers that are above what they've done in the past. If Anibal Sanchez is great, if Norris comes back well and pitches great, if Shane Green is the real legit number 5 starter, then, hey, it could happen. If the bullpen actually does its job, then, hey, maybe this team could peak out at, 95 to 98 wins. But it just seems like, are the components there and are they going to last? And a lot of people put in quotations, pending health. A lot of things are going to hinge on whether the aging veterans are going to stay healthy. So it'll kick off, and by the time you guys hear this on Wednesday, the Tigers will play their first game, hoping we're all hoping they get their first victory.
JV on the mound for opening day on the road there in Miami against Wei Yin Chen. Hard name for me to say. I think that's how you muster it all out and enunciate it properly from first to last name there for Mr. Chen, formerly of the Orioles, when he was a good member of the rotation and a frontline starter for the most part with that weekend rotation there 1 through 5 in Baltimore, as it has been in recent memory and will be this year as well, even with the addition of Giovanni Gallardo. So they'll miss Chen a little bit, and the Marlins will like him. He's a good added rotation arm for the top of that rotation there in Miami. And starting opening day instead of Jose Fernandez. Surprising to me, Doc.
Jim Campy on Twitter chimes in, more than the Lions.
More than the Lions for sure. Easy enough. That's a good quip.
Whenever you throw out a question on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, it's kind of fun because you do get the great answers, the silly answers, and then you always get the one or two people that are just going to have to rip the Lions because they open themselves up for it.
Yep. They take their chance to rip the Lions in any question really possible out there that gives you the opportunity, gives the people on Twitter the opportunity to do so. And yeah, that can be said. The Tigers will win more games. We know that much. Will win more than the Lions this year. And, okay, with all that being said, I wanted to talk about now the 5 major components of a team, and that determines whether or not that team can make it all the way to the Fall Classic. The 5 components, Doc, are the following here. Better listen up. Listen closely, everybody, listening to the podcast, because this is vital info you don't want to miss. Okay, kind of. I think so, at least. Now, it's the starting rotation and pen, 1 major one right there. And then you have the lineup. You have a strong, a deep lineup 1 through 9. If you don't, that will also affect your chances. And then you need a good quality skipper for in-game management purposes with the bullpen and all that. And then after that, you have the defensive ability of the team up the middle, at those up-the-middle positions. Catcher, second, shortstop, and in center field. Don't like what they have in center field, by the way, so we'll talk about that in a little bit when I touch on that specific point of the components. And the last major component is the health of the ball club. And maybe that's the biggest one, Doc. I actually started off with that one in my article for Detroit Athletic Company, and that's another shameless plug. I like to kind of go off of those articles and then talk about those, make those our talking points here on Tigers Talk per week. And that was the first one that I talked about in my article, the health of the ball club as a whole. You need that to be effective, and effective down the stretch as you make a pennant run and get deeper and deeper in the postseason, and hopefully get your way into the World Series. So the only way you will get the chance to play in the World Series, though, is if you have all 5 factors and quality aspects for those 5, positives for those 5 components. And once again, they are the health of the ball club, a good pitching staff with the bullpen and rotation both taken into account. Then you have to have a strong lineup, 1 through 9, for the most part at least. Good defensive ability up the middle at catcher, second, shortstop, and in center field. And also you need, last but not least, a manager who avoids making in-game mistakes on a consistent basis, which the Tigers, I think we all can say right now here and agree upon, are extremely lacking, very much lacking in that department with the manager and whether or not he can make those good in-game decisions, game in, game out. It's a long season, so he's bound. Every manager, no matter how good they are, Joe Madden of the Chicago Cubs, who's valued as one of the greatest skippers, maybe the greatest skipper in today's game, he's going to make some boneheaded decisions too. It's just, how many do you make, and do you have the ability? Do you have, as a skipper, the ability to curtail those mistakes to a minimum? Brad Ausmus, I doubt that he has that ability. Even with now 2 years under his belt of managing experience in the big leagues, I still doubt that he has that ability to curtail those in-game mistakes to a minimum. Doc, going into 2016, his 3rd year on the job here in Motown.
Okay, so I understand, obviously, health
of the ball club,
and Brad Ausmus are going to be limitations.
They are, definitely.
Okay, we've talked about that ad nauseum. Adam and I have talked about it. You've talked about it. Let's just try to put our heads together and say, okay, this offseason, in terms of maybe, I think we're discounting the fact that maybe Brad Ausmus could have used this offseason in terms of, preparing himself and getting ready because he knows his seat is hot. He's got a lot to do because the ball club improved. They added resources. I think one of the second organization ever to sign 2 9-figure guys in one offseason, okay? And they've spent. So they've given him a team, and his first season he was given a team. He was able to take them into the postseason, but they fizzled out in that series versus Baltimore.
And because of him a little bit.
Bit. But what do you think Brad Ausmus can bring to the table in terms of his strengths? We know his weaknesses in terms of his ability to consistently manage that bullpen, knowing exactly when to bring in a guy at the right time and using the right matchups. There were several situations where he got that wrong, and you could say it's easy to second guess in hindsight. You got to go with what your gut says at the time. But I do believe that there is a little bit of value in keeping a clubhouse together. There is a little bit of value in having a manager that the players respect. Now, you could argue that whether they do actually respect him, but everybody that talks about him says that, hey, this is a guy that is in charge of the ship, that will keep things calm, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. That's the attribute that he brought and learned from Jim Leland. And but the biggest question mark is his in-game managing. Do you think he has the ability to get better in that aspect this year?
He has to keep his job. If he doesn't, he'll be ousted by the end of the season, if not earlier, meaning by the trade deadline or by the All-Star game break. So maybe by July 1, July 15th, he's gone as the skipper of the Tigers if they struggle big time out of the gate and fall to 10 or 15 games under 500. Because his in-game managing was miserable last year, and even before that, as we mentioned in 2014, his first year on the job with the Tigers and as a big league skipper in totality. So you had to give him the benefit of the doubt and cut him some slack in his first year on the job there as a skipper in Motown back in 2014 now. But the thing is, still, you got to bring up and note that he struggled in the postseason there in that ALDS round against the Baltimore Orioles. His in-game managing there, leaving Sanchez in for 2 innings where he pitched perfectly almost, had 2 Ks and whatnot, and then pulling him after those 2 innings. Why not extend him, right? Lengthen his arm and allow him to pitch more than 2 innings when, he's been a starting pitcher his whole entire career leading up to that point in the postseason against the Orioles. Why not let him pitch more? Misusing Soria once they got him at the trade deadline of 2014. Didn't use him often enough. And use guys like Jabba Chamberlain. He just had so much affection and love for Jabba like you do for Bruce Rondon. It was sad and it was endless there in 2014 where he used Jabba constantly as an 8th inning guy when he struggled game in, game out almost all the way throughout the second half of that season because he was good. Got to give him that much. He was good in the first half, Jabba was. But in the second half, it was Soria's job. You traded for him, gave up what you did. Good prospects there to Texas to get him in return to pitch the 8th inning. Now you're not going to do that and you pitch Jabba instead? Made no sense there for me what Brad Ausmus was doing. Mismanaging him and then in the postseason, not pitching a guy like Soria or Sanchez more often and more frequently than they were utilized there out of the pen in the first round of that 2014 postseason against the Baltimore Orioles. So those 2 things flare up as big time examples of why he struggled and has in the past as that in-game manager. And those were those big time mistakes from his rookie season. But then, if you want to compile everything, put everything collectively together, there's also last year you got to take into account where you thought he would have learned something, right? Gotten better as an in-game skipper. Well, he really didn't, right? Look at what he did with Vmart all throughout the first half of the season, for the majority of the season, putting him into the cleanup spot when he couldn't even muster anything from the left side of the plate as a left-handed hitter. He had no power. Couldn't generate any power with his legs, right? His left leg had the knee problems. Then he kept putting him in the cleanup spot. That made no sense to me. What he was doing there with Vmart could have had J.D. Martinez hitting fourth a lot earlier than he did last year. And then later in the season, late September, I believe it was a September 30th game against the Texas Rangers. We talked about it ad nauseum when it first happened, Doc, on Tigers Talk here. And it was about Daniel Norris, his start there in late September. I believe it was once again September 30th against Tejas in Texas. And he had to pitch 54 pitches to get through the first inning, 13 days after coming off of the disabled list. So he was not the healthiest guy. And a young guy, he's only 22 right now, Doc, going to be turning 23 by the end of the month. And he left him out there to dry, hung him out there to dry, having him pitch 54 pitches in that first inning and allowing 5 runs in that first inning and still allowing him to finish the first inning and then to have him go out for the second inning as well. To make matters worse, Doc, it made no sense, it was so inexcusable. And then he said his excuse for leaving him out there through all that damage was that, well, he wanted to get his pitch count up because he hadn't, done a lot of pitching recently because of his disabled list stint. But the thing is, it made no sense when you have no pennant race, nothing to compete for. He's a young guy. Don't harm him more, hamper him more by getting him hurt out there, by leaving him out there for all that time. It made no sense. It was way too long of a leash, and that was a big-time in-game mistake where also, at the same time, it could have damaged Daniel Norris for a long, long time and hurt his arm even more severely to the point where he might not have been even at the point where he is now, even though he's hurt again now. Another, injury has flared up here, and he's getting back from that, being put on the disabled list to start the year. But you don't want these injuries piling up and hampering him going forward. So that could have been another issue caused by the manager, Brad Ausmus, because of his stupidity and leaving Norris out there for all those pitches and in conditions where he wasn't his best. And you knew it from the get-go in the first inning of that ball game late in September last year, Doc. So for me, he's got to improve upon all that, his in-game managing. And the one thing that I think helped him save his job last year when all the accounts were saying that, well, he was going to be fired at the end of the season. The one thing that really came through and saved his behind, I think, was him booting Bruce Rondon out of the clubhouse and saying you had to go home because of his lack of energy there towards the end of the year. That saved his job a little bit, and I do believe with you a little bit too, Doc. The players like him. They like him actually a lot too, I'll say. Thing is, though, remember what happened there with David Price earlier in the year when he was a member of the Tigers in the first half of last season. David Price and him had a falling out when he pulled him from a game. Price didn't like it, so Price wasn't going to sign here. He wasn't going to sign here, and that was a bad mistake there on the part of Brad Ausmus. So that's an example where he wasn't the best inside the clubhouse with getting along and meshing with everybody on the team.
All right, GM Vito, let's just say, for example, for entertainment's sake, Brad Ausmus and the team get off to a rough start. GM Vito is in the Tigers front office, sitting in his nice leather couch, nice leather chair, nice table, everything going down. You bring in Brad Ausmus. What do you tell him to let him go? How does GM Vito
handle that decision?
Fire Brad Ausmus.
Get the F out of here. No, I would never use the expletive and drop the F-bomb, but he deserved it last year at times, didn't he? He sure did. You wouldn't expect that out of me. I know that. Yeah. Nobody would expect that out of me. But I would be calmer, cooler, collected. I think I'm that kind of guy that can handle the pressure at times, the stress level, and keep it to a minimum, even in that situation, which actually I would be sweating bullets at the same time dealing with that, a firing of somebody who I've gotten to know. And Al Avila has gotten to like him. That's why I kept him, obviously, for his third year, the last year of his contract. So I would have told him that we've appreciated all your efforts up to this point, but we choose to go in a different direction to pursue contention in the following season. If I would have let him go last year at the end of the campaign, I would have said something along those lines that we've appreciated your efforts, what you've done for this organization in your time here. The players have liked you. We have liked you as a man on and off the baseball diamond, but we're choosing to go in a different direction to pursue the opportunity to contend for a division title and something even greater than that next season. So I would have let him off the hook there easily, instead of dropping the F-bomb like maybe some expletive-laden people and hungry people would have chosen the opportunity to do so with Brad Ausmus in that situation, and especially last year at the end of the season when the team failed miserably and finished in last place for the first time since 2008. And that was the first time they had finished under 500 in so long as well, and had missed out on the postseason, because they hadn't missed out on the postseason before last year since 2010. It was a big time miserable year for the Tigers as a whole, and Brad Ausmus was at the forefront of why it was miserable too, in my opinion.
See, GM Doc would handle it a lot more passively, and here's what I would do. I would thank him I would probably...
Don't thank him for his efforts.
No. I wouldn't even meet with him. I would kind of hang around the clubhouse, shake his hand every game, say, good job. And then the day that I decided that he was no longer going to be the manager, he'd go home, I'd fire off a call to his agent, thanks, we're done. Click, and just move on.
Leave it at that. You're a horrible human being.
Let the agent break the bad news. I think the conduit where I don't really believe, probably they are handling it face-to-face, but I would handle it where the general manager just talks to the agent, thank you very much, and maybe a year or two later, shoot him off an email, thank you.
But you're a psychologist. You deal with people face-to-face all the time for your appointments and whatnot. When your clients meet with you, you got to meet with them face-to-face.
Yeah, I do. And I usually don't like giving bad news. That's just...
It's hard for you to... Okay, I got that. And it's hard
I'm more uplifting of a therapist.
It's hard for some people to deliver the bad news,
yes,
too. And I get that. But be a man, right?
Oh, and then...
Step up to the plate and be man.
The assistant GM would be the one that has outgoing, what do you call it, exit interview.
Okay. You would let him handle the dirty work, the delivering of the bad news, because you wouldn't want to be there to deliver that negative news.
I think we're talking about general manager John, not psychologist John. General manager John.
Psychologist John has to deliver some bad news at times that people don't want to hear.
That's different. General manager John would be a little bit more Teflon.
Okay.
A little bit. You'd have to go through like 2 or 3 people to get to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so it has to go through maybe my assistant general manager, which would be you, and then it would be someone else, and then boom, 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 and then you and I will meet every day. You can kind of give me the down low on what's going on, and then when I make an appearance, it's a big deal. Like, oh,
he's there, just like Mike Ilitch when he shows up now, right?
It's like a big deal,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now LVO is all around the place. You see him all the time. It's not as much, but like, to make a reference with the Lions, Martin Mayhew, he never spoke. So whenever he ever did say something, it was a big deal. That's how I would be.
Because Al Avila is doing interviews left and right with 105.1, everybody that he can talk to, it seems like, to talk about the Tigers roster and what they can do this season. But for you doing that, that's not being a man. You got to be manly. Okay. Step up to the plate and man up and talk to the person one-on-one to deliver the bad news. You got to be that as the front man, right? The head man of the front office. You're the head honcho. You're not going to do that yourself, deliver the bad news to the person man on man.
That's why I'm not the general manager. That's why.
And that's why, I had a problem with you saying that, too, that I would be the assistant working under you. I'd be the head honcho. You'd be working under me.
Yeah, probably.
Come on, I'd be the boss.
Yep,
With
probably.
that being said. Or I'd be the guy doing all your dirty work, the guy really knowing the stuff, and you would just be the guy that has the face, right, with the name that people would know from, well, you didn't want to make the appearances, though, but you would be the person really in that role than making the appearances, because I would be handling the work behind the scenes of actually doing the analytical work, the analyzing of the teams, the scouting of the teams, and looking into the ball players that we want to add to the ball club. But anyways, we just know you wouldn't be the GM of any ball club in Major
Right.
League Baseball. We know that much here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And you know what, Doc, with that, we'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll get right back after that to talking about the 5 major components of what it takes to win a World Series.
And later on in the podcast, stay tuned. I have major accolades to heap upon you. You have won something prestigious and hopefully takes place every single year, and you will receive some kind of public credit from the doc later on in this podcast.
Ooh, I can't wait now. And we'll be right back after this quick commercial break on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, the website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And also, remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And back here on episode number 35 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, I'm your host as usual, Vito Jerome Chirco, alongside my sidekick, the Podfather as I call him, John Macaroon. John, you're still doing well, looking good on that phone, studying whatever you may be, or texting whoever you may be. And I appreciate that you also give me time, though, too, on the podcast. And when you do, it's delightful. Always delightful because it's you, Doc.
Yeah, always trying to get and boost engagement. A lot of people respond to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and I also gave love just recently to our valued sponsorship with Team Top Cat. We appreciate that, our continued sponsorship. Without them, without the likes of FanaticU.com, Top Cat Sales, we wouldn't be able to really do this project, and so I really appreciate the support that we get from our sponsors. Helps keep the mics hot, the office lights on, and I really enjoyed doing the project. So our sponsorships are hopefully continuing to be successful on everyone's end, and everything's been going great. And like I said, I really like the engagement that we have through our Twitter community and through those that listen to the weekly podcast. And I'm just so excited that every week I get to check in with you and see how the Tigers are doing and share if my thoughts are crazy or not and have a little fun. So it's always fun. And I know you're skipping out today. I don't know if I did something and you're not telling me, but because you seem like
No, you didn't do anything.
Oh, okay. Are you sure?
You didn't do anything. I promise you. If you would have, I would. Well, I probably wouldn't let you know, actually.
Okay.
But I would let you know maybe down the line in a nonchalant way.
Yeah, so same thing like I would be through the podcast. If you have any complaints, talk to Adam.
Yeah, you don't want to handle it.
No.
Even though you're the Podfather, you don't want to handle it.
You don't bring any problems to me directly. Please go through the proper authority channels. So you go through Adam first, then it comes to me.
That's the chain of authority.
Chain
That's
of
when
authority.
you go to first. It's Adam Strozinski. You go to first, not John
Exactly.
Macker. Now we know here. We learned
Exactly.
something today on the Tigers Talk podcast.
Thank you.
And so to set the table for opening day for the Tigers on the road in Miami, JV on the mound, game 1 on the day of our recording. And game 2, it's Anibal Sanchez, Doc.
Oh, boy.
Now, he's been miserable in the past. Last year, 4.99 ERA. We've talked about him ad nauseum, about his injury concerns, too, and those flaring up here and there. And I think they will consistently this year as well. But from all accounts, he's at least healthy enough to make this start on the road in Miami, but it's against the real staff ace of the Marlins and Jose Fernandez. He's the top dog, or if you want to call it the top fish there in Miami for that rotation. He's dynamite at times, and usually he is. And at home, pitching in front of his home crowd, in a game that people will actually be at there in Miami because it's still the beginning of the season, and they want to see him pitch. And against the Tigers, who bring some quality ball players to the ballpark every single time they come out, such as Miguel Cabrera, the former Miami, or when it was Florida Marlin there. And he was a great member of the Fish when they were the Florida Marlins. So people probably want to come back and see him play, the 2-time MVP. He's got to be healthy. But first and foremost, the question here to you is about Anibal Sanchez now. We know about his health concern. And early on here, though, in the season, is that going to be a big one for you as you look at his starts and really watch him make progress and, well, evaluate what he does start to start, Doc? Is that a big-time concern for you?
Yeah, my concerns with Anibal Sanchez really stem from watching him in totality last year. Even when healthy, and you could argue, well, maybe he had some effects or that he just hasn't been used to, the intense wear and tear on his arm in previous years because he did pitch quite a bit. But last year, when the season started, he was giving up a lot of home runs. And he was on such a torrid pace in terms of how many home runs he was allowing. We thought that maybe he could shatter records in terms of, hey, he's serving up balls that are just getting, not just, balls that just get out of, the stadium. No, he was serving up moonshots, and he was giving up quite a bit of home runs, and he wasn't that effective. And so then when you look at how much money he's making in salary, you're a little bit concerned when you have a pitcher making $16 million plus. Now, that may be the going rate, but night in, night out, my confidence is lowest with Anibal Sanchez, because is he going to be out there? Is he going to be the pitcher that, has had some success sometimes versus Kansas City, where he'd go out there and just shut it down? What we saw last year was a guy that struggled. We saw a pitcher that once he got into the 5th and 6th innings, around pitches 95 through 100, he really tailed off, and he wasn't a guy that could go late in the games. So we're trying our best to do anything to avoid getting into that bullpen. So we're going to need starters to go at least 5 to 7 innings consistently, not giving up way too many runs. So game in, game out, I'm just going to be looking for, is he going to be able to command his pitches? Is he going to limit the number of home runs he gives up? Is he going to stay healthy? Because if another season is like he's had in the past, where a lot of games are lost due to injury, it's going to be a big problem, because, like you said, one of the key components to a successful team is starting pitching. And Anibal is going to be counted upon. He has a valuable weight, because if Zimmerman and Verlander struggle, he's going to be counted upon to maybe stop some losing streaks. I'm not really certain just yet. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping he can have a significant season and play very, very well. As we sit today, my confidence with Anibal Sanchez is very low.
My confidence level is very low as well about Anibal. And for the Tigers' rotation and whether or not it's good enough, it's about what they have after the 1 and 2 in JV and Jordan Zimmerman. Who's at number 3, though? We just talked about him. It is Anibal Sanchez. And that's why, truly, as you were leading on to and saying, he's the most valuable asset for the Tigers. And that's why he brings the most concern with his injury past now, his horrible performance last year as a whole, too. So he's got to be a lot better. And you said it. You brought up about the home run ball, giving up all those home runs last year, 29 in total, tied for the American League most allowed by a pitcher. So he allowed those 29. Now this year, he's got to curtail the gopher ball. He really does. Those have to be limited. And if they're not, well, he's going to have a troublesome season once again for himself and the Tigers. And you brought up the Tigers and the rotation. Really, all the guys have to go deep, right? And especially, you know what? I'm going to say this much. To start off this year, they really got to go 6-7 innings. Because look at all the injuries to start off the year for that Tigers pen. Alex Wilson missing the beginning of the year. Blaine Hardy missing the beginning of the year. Rondon being demoted to the minors, not being good enough as of right now to be in the Major League bullpen for the Tigers. So that tells you right there, you really got to get to the 7th inning for the Tigers, aim with the lead for the Tigers to have a chance. Because, well, guess what? Really, their middle inning guys are not good enough, are not reliable and quality enough arms right now, well, to be reliable. So that means the Tiger starters have to go the 6, have to go the 7 innings to alleviate having to use those guys in the middle innings right now, pitching in the pen to start the season, which are the likes of Kyle Ryan, Logan Kensing, those kind of guys who are pitching in the middle innings of the game. And Drew Verhagen, probably the most reliable guy in the middle innings right now for the Tigers. And that's a scary thought because he came out of nowhere last year to be that quality middle innings guy. So that means, for me, as I was already saying, as you've pointed out too, the Tigers starters have to go their 6 or 7 for the Tigers to have a true chance of winning these games to start the season because of all those injuries that have piled up early on here with Blaine Hardy and with Alex Wilson specifically. And it sounds like to me you're going to track Anibal Sanchez start to start then, because I wanted to ask you that too, as I am as well, because he's a big-time concern, and it's really, truly because of the fact, as you brought up too, Doc, he is going to be that most valuable asset in the Tigers' rotation, because he will make the difference, in my opinion, to whether or not the Tigers' rotation will be good enough to contend for a division title, and something possibly even greater as well this year.
Okay, now, Shane Green has made his way and earned his way back to the starting rotation. He's going to be the number 5 guy. So, are you excited about him? Do you feel like he will last in the starting rotation, or will he be the first guy? Who'll be bumped when Daniel Norris comes back?
Green, if he struggles, which people are projecting that right now because of how poorly he did after the month of April last year. But remember, he was 3-0 with the sub-1 ERA, I even believe. So he was good, but even that good, Cy Young caliber good. And people started talking about, well, maybe, just maybe, he's good enough to do some damage later on in the year and become that Cy Young caliber arm realistically, too. Well, he didn't do that as the season went on. He struggled and struggled more and flamed out and was sent to the minors even because he was so bad. So as a fifth starter now.
Don't forget his short but explosive stint in that bullpen. Whoo, it was terrible. We got some memes out of that.
Oh my gosh, the bullpen was miserable as a whole, and it made all of us drink, right? Wasn't that a meme that we used last year too? This bullpen, or our bullpen makes us drink. I think it did for a lot of people who weren't even alcohol consumers or alcoholics or even near to that level of being an alcohol consumer. So made a lot of people drink, to sum it up. And I think this year not as much, but they got to get guys healthy and back into their normal spots in the pen for the Tigers pen to actually be a legitimate strength or at least a non-problem in 2016. And with all that said, to answer your question specifically, Green would be the guy demoted to make room for Daniel Norris in the rotation as a fifth starter and the Tigers' roto. But that's all also, it's also all contingent upon the fact that, well, Shane Green struggles. If he pitches like he has in spring in the regular season here, I think Norris stays in the minor for a longer stint, just to get himself totally rectified and good enough to be that starter long-term, who can be a middle-of-the-rotation guy and even a top-of-the-rotation guy in future campaigns for the Tigers. So that's what I have to say regarding that to answer your question about Shane Green. But also, in these two games, Verlander on the mound against Wei Yin Chen, against him now. And then also, you have Anibal Sanchez against Jose Fernandez in game 2. What do you think's going to happen? Who's going to take these games? Will they take one out of two or both games or not take either? What do you think, Doc?
Optimism reigns supreme to start the year. I'm not going to be negative till I at least see the first pitch. I'm going to say they're going to win the first two games, and they're going to be in devastating fashion. 6-0, and they will win the second game very tight. I think Anibal Sanchez will get a no decision, and they'll win the game 4-1.
I think Anibal goes 5 innings in his start. First start of the year, the game number 2 for each of the Marlins and the Tigers, and they lose that game to Jose Fernandez, who's a dominant ace and much better than Anibal Sanchez at this point. And really, I think Fernandez is better than Anibal Sanchez has ever been in his major league career. And that's saying a lot because Anibal was good at one point. I mean, look at 2013, the American League ERA leader. So he's been good, won't be as good, nearly as good this year or lights out. I think with all that being said, he'll be a 5-inning guy, a 6-inning guy, and he's been that in the past, but I think even more of that this year, which is a scary thing for the Tigers when he's your number 3 starter. And really, as I said before, the difference maker between the Tigers' rotation being a solid one and a subpar one this year, Doc. So for me to give my answer completely here for everybody to hear, in game 1 and 2, what I see the Tigers doing is that they take game 1 with Verlander on the mound. I think he'll be pretty much lights out, but in game 2, they lose to the Marlins. So they take 1 out of 2 with the Fish there in Miami to start the season. And then we have the Bronx Bombers coming up, opening day here in Comerica Park and opening day weekend in Motown. Doc, what do you see the Tigers doing against the Yankees?
Yeah, opening series is going to be nice. You're going to have to. I'm excited just to see what Jordan Zimmerman is going to bring to the table in the regular season. I do believe he's got strong stuff. He's going to be able to really handle business. And the Yankees are coming off of a season where they spent, I believe, the least in terms of dollars attributed to free agency, and that's not something you were really used to hearing in terms of how much capital was allocated for the Yankees. Spending the least? That's really unusual. So the Yankees are counting on aged veterans and a nice mix of guys that they've brought in. So it'll be a fun series. It'll be very exciting, that first series. But let's just hope that the snow stays away. I mean,
please, right? We don't need any of that.
Driving into the office on Monday in the midst of a snowstorm was unbelievable. Now, it didn't last all day. It wasn't nothing that stuck. But are you kidding me now? Waking up on April 4th and it's cold outside? I'm trying to wear a light coat and I'm getting discussed and getting talked to by my wife saying, hey, you got to wear a thicker coat. And I'm like,
warm up, baby. You got to stay warm and healthy for the kids at home and for her. Come on.
But
for her and everybody.
Let's hope that the weather is something that allows the fans, because a lot of people are going to go down this opening weekend. It allows the fans to really enjoy their experience because, if it's snowing or if it's going to be something where it's not going to be comfortable, it'll just kind of taint the experience and not make it something fun because, it's a fun atmosphere. The start of the baseball season is supposed to represent springtime, nice weather, good things happening, not snow and cold and
maybe rain, showers, right? But not snow showers, not at this time of the year.
Let's check the app and see what the heck's going on.
Check it out. Check out the weather for Friday because it should, I hope to God that it's bright out. It's a great atmosphere, and the weather supports the great atmosphere that will be present there, no matter what, on opening day here in Motown, as it always is year in, year out, no matter if there's snow, rain, shine, or, or not great weather, and maybe even sleet, or something really miserable. And, hey, it's been miserable in the past year, right? Opening day, first year of Comerica Park in 2000, it was snowing that day. Snowing. Please no snowfall, right? No snowfall this year for opening day at Comerica, Doc.
Doc here with the 3-day weather report. Thursday, going to be 41 and slightly cloudy, 20% chance of rain. Friday, the all-important day, opening day, Detroit Tigers downtown, 37 degrees, low of 23, with a 20% chance of rain. So it's going to be...
No snow. Snow's out of the picture, it sounds
Snow's
like.
out of the
Great.
picture.
That's great to hear.
So the best day, if you're looking to get downtown, Sunday, 45 degrees, 20% chance of rain. Back to you, Vito.
Thank you with that weather report, Doc, for that very much. And hey, you can do everything, it seems like, Doc. Now, I wanted to bring up really quick here with this series coming up against the Yanks, Bronx Bombers. But this Bronx Bombers squad is actually an aging, veteran-laden one, especially when you talk about their lineup, the core of their lineup. It's very much aging. And I think with all that being said, they could be a last-place team in the American League East this year. They could really bottom out and be that bad, guys. Now, the rotation at the top is not too shabby. Masahiro Tanaka, Michael Pineda, if they both stay healthy, I like what they have at the top 1 and 2. But the rest of the rotation, as you go down the list of their arms from 3 through 5, not as quality of arms and guys who really aren't relevant anymore, such as CC Sabathia, the guy that used to be able to throw 95 and be a great, even an ace caliber arm when the Yankees first signed him. But now he's a miserable contract guy who's an aging vet who no longer brings his A and or top quality stuff start in, start out. And it's because he's an aging vet, a guy that no longer is that ace and will no longer be that ace caliber arm in his career. He's more of a back end of the rotation guy, a fifth starter, realistically at best right now for the Yanks. And honestly, they would like to dispose of him. I know that much, too, because he really brings nothing and had to enter rehab before the one-game playoff last year against the Astros that the Yankees lost. And Sabathia doesn't bring much to the table at this point. And with all that being said, the Yankees truly would be better without him, and he would be an addition by subtraction. So the Yankees will struggle this year with the back end of the rotation. Their pen they will not. It's mighty strong with the likes of Betances, Andrew Miller, Aroldis Chapman eventually being their closer. Miller being that guy that can close. Now he was hit by a pitch that was hit at him, and that has affected him. But he's still healthy. He'll bounce back, be good, be lights out in the 8th inning, can be that lights out closer too like he was last year. And they got a 3-headed monster in that bullpen now because it's not only Miller, but like I said, Chapman in the 9th. He's going to be their permanent closer. Once he gets back from the suspension, he'll be that guy in the 9th inning, shutting the door down, just like Mariano Rivera, the Sandman, did there in the Bronx for so long on a consistent basis. So I like what they have there in the 9th, 8th, and 7th innings in the Yankees' pen. But their lineup will be aging, will be one of their faults, and probably a big fault and or flaw this year in the Bronx because too many aging vets, Teixeira, A-Rod, who I like to call A-Royd. Will he be as good as he was last year? Teixeira, he's got to stay healthy. Well, he was hurt towards the end of last year, and then Gregory Bird subbed in and was superb there at first base. Well, Bird's now out himself. So you don't got Bird going into the season. You got Teixeira, A-Rod, A-Royd, Jacoby Ellsbury, Brett Gardner, guys that get hurt and pretty frequently. So what will they bring to the table? I don't like what they will. And that's why I could see them finishing last. But to actually sum all this up for the weekend, looking at just that, and once again, great weather report by you, Doc. I want to give some predictions now for this weekend and what I see the Tigers doing in the most pivotal game of the season so far, which is the home opening day on Friday, April 8th, with Jordan Zimmerman on the mound, the offseason acquisition for the top of the Tigers rotation. And I like what he will bring. I think he will be good enough to get it done against that Yankees lineup, which is more porous than it has been, as I was saying already, as it has been in recent memory. So the Tigers get the win on opening day here in Motown. That's my take. So that means I think the Tigers, by the end of Friday, April 8th, will be 2-1 on the season.
Okay, and so you're calling for a successful first week. You're looking for the Tigers to really kind of, you're kind of evaluating what you're going to see this first week and really hope that some of the question marks that we have can start to be looked at and explored. It's nice. It's nice to be able to now start the baseball season looking at everything. And already the first story was, did you check out Clayton Kershaw's debut?
Ooh,
my God.
Baby, one hitter? Almost a no-hitter on opening day? Come on, man.
It was awesome. And the run support that they gave him.
15-0?
The Dodgers spanked the Padres. They were horrible.
Yep. The Friars had no chance, and they probably won't have a chance in a lot of games this year. The Dodgers are a monster ball club, can be a great team that wins the World Series this year in the National League, which we haven't talked about that much this year, but we will dive into that more and more as the season progresses. But really quick, Doc, before we end today's show, the 5 major components, once again, let's reiterate all of those, and let me get your take on those 5 components and whether or not you think the Tigers have quality enough aspects or positives in those departments enough to be legitimate contenders then to win the division, but also to make the Fall Classic this year. And that first major component that I touched on before is the health of the ball club as a whole.
Health.
Will it be there? Will it be? Yes or no? The health.
Yes, it'll be there.
It will be there. Okay, so quality component you're saying, surprisingly. I'm saying no. Then let's look at the pitching staff, rotation and pen. Doc, will it be there? No.
1 and 2 will be okay. 3 through 5 will be a shuffling rotation.
How about the pen now?
The pen will be adequate, and it will be aided by increased offense. So I believe the overall numbers will be down, but there will be fewer save opportunities, and there'll be more leads where they'll come in just to have to, I guess the stat that you might be looking for is holds. There'll be a lot more holds, not a lot of save opportunities because the offense, this team will, bold prediction, this team will lead the entire Major League Baseball in home runs and runs scored.
Home runs. Wow, Miggy was not a home run hitter last year. Vmart was not, hampered by injuries. They would have to do a lot, would really have to turn around the ship to be the home run leaders in all of Major League Baseball.
Led by James McCann and Castellanos.
They could be on the verge of breakout seasons. I'll give you that much.
Who will be on the tail of J.D. Martinez in terms of, raking and getting a lot of production.
Home run production, those guys, out of McCann and Castellanos. I could see it out of Castellanos.
20-20 and 35-40 for J.D.
Okay, that's fair.
If you want
20, I say 20 for Castellanos, not for McCann. I say about 10, 12.
And if I want to go bold, I can say that Miggy, Vmart, J.D., McCann, Castellanos all have 20 home runs or more.
McCann will not. I'll give you that much.
5 guys.
And Vmart will not.
Will have 20 home runs.
I say 3 out of those 5 guys will. JD for sure will have the highest amount and will have maybe 40.
Bold today.
I'm hoping JD, saying this today on the podcast, I hope that for the season, JD breaks that threshold of 40 home runs. And I think he can do it. He's the one guy on this roster that can. And now let's look at, I think that will be a weakness. So a reason why they won't win the World Series is because of the lack of depth in the pen and rotation. So I'm going to say that's a weakness. It sounds like for you, it's going to be adequate enough. Now, looking at the lineup as a whole, I think that's more than good, will be great, as we just touched on, so we don't have to talk about that again. We think the lineup will be good enough to win a World Series this year. But that's the biggest strength they have, and maybe the only strength outside of now the next component here, the up the middle of the diamond defense. Now, that means catcher, second, shortstop, and in center field. I think it will be adequate enough. So that's another reason why I could see them doing something positive this year, and maybe even advancing to the Fall Classic if they get into the playoffs. Doc, for you, the defensive ability of the Tigers up the middle, will it be good enough this year to make that run to the World Series?
It'll be adequate, yes.
So adequate, you like using that word. Is that your favorite word of the day?
Yes, today's word of the day, adequate. It'll be enough where they'll make some mistakes. Obviously, third base is a position that might need some defensive improvement, but Kinsler, I believe Kinsler will do a good job over there. Iglesias is a defensive stalwart, so I'm satisfied with what they got, and I believe that the defense will actually try to prevent some runs this year, and they'll do okay. They'll do adequate.
Okay, there we go. The word of the day from Doc. And Kinsler was robbed of a Gold Glove last year. So he should have won last year. I think he will win one before his career is over. And Iglesias, same thing, still hasn't won one. But he's got to be better at the routine plays. Maybe cut out the flashiness and just get the job done, right? There at shortstop. But I think he will enough. And the only weakness here defensively up the middle is at center field with Maven and Ghost. I just hope they're better than they were last year when they were both worth negative defensive runs saved. They can't be that again this year. The Tigers truly want to, well, not only compete for a playoff spot, but maybe even do more than that and win the division and make that run to the Fall Classic. But last component here to talk about is the skipper, Brett Ausmus. I already talked about him. I don't think he'll be good enough. Doc, will he be good enough in your opinion?
Oh.
Will he be better at least than last year?
Okay.
I don't even know if I can say that, Doc.
My theme of positivity is going to be tested here. I want to be positive. I want to see growth. I don't think they'll make a move during the season, but if I'm a betting man, the higher percentage is that he will be let go at the end of the season. But I'm hoping that I'm wrong and that he does improve and is able to utilize these advanced numbers the right ways, can handle the pitching staff in the bullpen, and the troops will rally around him, and we can have a successful season. But, I'm thinking 60-40, he is not retained. And I don't believe at any point in the season he'll be fired, but 60-40, he is not back.
I think he has the hottest seat in baseball of all the Major League managers. I think he really does right now. So at least in the American League, come on. Brett Ausmus right now has the hottest seat. And I know you can talk about Robin Ventura there in Chicago, land with the White Sox. He might be fired by the end of the season too, and I think he actually will be ousted. But Brett Ausmus now, he's been equipped with this ball club. Better than last year's ball club. More depth. Not a ton of it, but still more depth, and that's a positive. A good first step moving forward for the Tigers as an organization. So Ausmus more equipped with a better roster. That's why I'm going to say that he will be better almost by default as a result of that, because the roster will be better. And I think he'll be more analytically sound. okay, more of a handle of the analytics and utilizing them or incorporating them into his in-game strategy, into his lineups and what he does and the decisions that he makes during a game. So I think he will be a better skipper, but still by the end of the season, if they finished only 80 and 82, I think he's gone. I think anything below 500 means the Tigers fire him at the end of the season, and rightfully so if that does come to be. Doc, with that, great stuff.
Wait,
you have something.
I know you're ready to fly out of here.
I'm almost ready.
Drop in
so I
and
guess
drop
I'm not
out.
totally ready.
Okay.
Let's hear what else you got.
So on the Detroit Sports Podcast, after a great, thrilling game, Villanova won the NCAA tournament. The Detroit Sports Podcast Network ran a bracket challenge, and we opened it up to. We did two different ones. We opened it up to the listeners, and we opened it up to the hosts. And I want to give you credit, big applause. Just like always, the doc was leading all the way through until the Final Four, and you were able to correctly and brightly have North Carolina in the final game. You had them advancing. Unfortunately, they didn't win the game. They were one defensive stop away from getting the game into overtime. It didn't happen. You were right. You were able to remove your, in-state ties, and not like me and the rest of the hosts who just went with Michigan State all across the board. It was me, Jason Jarvie, Adam, and Jerry, and we all had state winning it all. The lone person who had Carolina winning it all was yourself, Vito, Jerome, Chirco. You won the Detroit Sports Podcast Network Host Challenge. Congrats to you. You know the most about college basketball on the network. Props to you. You won. You finished number one with the doc, a close second.
I can't believe you finished in second place.
What?
You must have gotten lucky.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm going there.
Oh.
Little burn. Take the burn.
No!
Oh, no, yeah, because I went there, baby. And, okay, so you are the podfather, though. I got to bow down to you at times, but I'm not going to bow down to you all the time, even though I know you know your stuff. But in college hoops, I think I do know more. And I guess it played out to be the case. And that's great to hear that I did win the bracket challenge there with all of our hosts here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I appreciate that. But I was going to ask you, too.
No.
That's great, but what do I get? What's my prize, man? Do I get some kind of, financial incentive or something given to me for winning that bracket?
Now, unfortunately, I had something lined up, but I realized, now this is the backhanded part of the award.
Oh, man.
If Vinny Stubbs had the wherewithal to actually do extra, he would have won the challenge because he entered the listener challenge, and I'm hoping he would have entered the same bracket. He would have finished with more points than you.
So you're telling me he failed to enter his bracket into the host challenge, too?
Yes. No, he successfully entered it into the listener challenge.
Listener one, but not for all of us as hosts?
I told him, all you got to do is transport your bracket into the listener one. Did he do it? No. So you technically won by default. Vinny had the most points in the
V's.
listeners.
Vinny and Vito.
93 points.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we have to revoke your prize, but you do get.
So I don't get anything now, huh? That's how you get out of giving me something, pretty much.
So
right?
unfortunately, you get no prize.
Great. Thanks.
You get a verbal good job of those.
A pat on the back. Can I get a pat on the back, too, maybe?
Pat on the back.
All right, thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Vito, Jerome, Chirco, congratulations on being the best person who entered the DSP.
Actually entered a bracket. I'm glad that I entered my bracket. I can pat my back on that. And for everybody that entered their bracket, you know what? They deserve a pat on the back as well here at the end. It was unbelievable that Vinny didn't turn in his bracket. You got to do that, man. You got to get better with that. Smart up, right? Come on.
Tell him, wise
Use your
up.
brain. Wise up and enter your bracket next time for next year's bracket challenge. And Doc, with that being said, lovely insight,
start to
lovely
the
talk
season.
from you.
Woo!
Great, exciting season should be in store here for the Tigers. Enjoy opening day, home opening day, Friday, April 8th. And until next time, have a great week as a whole, too. And we'll talk to you next week for episode number 36 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.